Happy 2020, beautiful beings, and welcome back to my channel. I am Coach V. I am a holistic mental health and healing coach, national speaker, and the creator of the Mental Health is Sexy brand. On January 24th of this year, I will be able to add published author to my list of titles. So I'm going to record another video to tell you all about my new book I have coming out. So stay tuned. Today, I'm beginning a new segment on my channel called Storytime. And in those story times, I will share with you real life examples of my mental health journey as well as my experience with mental illness. So, by today being the first segment in the Storytime series on this channel, I figure I need to take you back, way back into time when I first exhibited the physical manifestations of a mental illness. First off, what y'all think about my bantus? I'm just trying something new, protective styles while it's still cold here in Ohio. I'm on a journey to grow my hair by 6 or 7 inches, so just testing out new ways and techniques to protect my ends as well as to treat my scalp, let it breathe, so on and so forth. So let me know in the comments if you have any new ideas that I could try out or what you're thinking about my bantus. I did put on my African continent earrings to kind of let everything flow together. But anyway, back to story time. So when I was 16 years old, I was raised in a very strict religious household. I understand that my mom did the best that she could do with the tools that she was given as far as being a parent. But I'm also very clear now that I'm older that my mother hadn't healed from her experience of abuse and trauma as a child and as an adult. So when we walk around with things not being healed or resolved or released, we a lot of times inadvertently treat those around us, more often the people we care about, in an abusive way. Whether it's physical, mental, emotional, financial, spiritual. Sometimes people are just so mentally bombarded by so much trauma that they can't see that what they're doing may be harmful to others. I'm also speaking from experience on that, but I'll save that for another video as well. So, with all that being said, at the age of 16, I was working. Here in Cincinnati, we have these convenience stores called United Dairy Farmers. And so that was my first job as a dip clerk for United Dairy Farmers. So I made malts, shakes, sundaes, scoops of ice cream in cups, scoops of ice cream in cones, freezes, froyo. That was my job assignment. And then occasionally I was allowed to work the cash register. But it was only during certain hours because at the age of 16, I couldn't ring up alcohol. So if it was like a Friday or a Saturday and there's a lot of alcohol sales, they usually would keep the minors off of the cash register so that the lines can flow more smoothly. And we were assigned to dip side, so making ice cream products. So at United Dairy Farmers, of course, we wear aprons. The aprons have pockets. And what was happening at that point in my life, I was getting a lot of attention from men. And I mean men, not 16-year-olds like me, I mean grown men. And I was in a space where I didn't want to offend anyone or, have a bad experience at work. So I would take the numbers and put them in my pocket and continue about my business day. Take the numbers, put them in my pocket, continue to sell the ice cream. Take the numbers, put them in my pocket, bring up their Little Debbie snack cakes. That was my routine. And at the end of my shift, because I knew my mom was very deep into her religion and I want no smoke, I would throw the numbers away. One particular evening, I forgot to throw the numbers away, so they were still in my apron pockets. So the next day, getting ready to go to work, something had set my mom off. I honestly don't remember what the argument was about or how it started. I don't remember how the argument started, but I do remember the middle and the ending. And in the middle of the conversation, because I really can't say it was an argument. I was the kid who didn't talk back to my mom. I was afraid of getting physically disciplined. I didn't like being yelled at and cursed at. So I was the kid that would just stand there and take it. And I'd probably be saying crazy stuff all in my head, but I would keep it inside. I wasn't foolish enough to talk back or fight back because, it's my mom. You don't do that. So, the middle of the argument, I had my uniform on, I had put my apron on, and I guess my face was just such a blank stare because I was just taking in what she was saying. I think that rubbed her further the wrong way. So she started off on this tirade of curse words and accusations, and she was so close to my face, I felt the spittle like pop on my nose and in my eyeball and on my cheek. And I was too afraid to wipe it off because I figured it would be another point to aggravate her more. So I was just standing there as spit was just being layered upon my face during this moment. And during her fussing at me, she reached in my apron pockets and she felt these pieces of paper. So when she pulled them out, there was at least, I believe, 3 different names and numbers of customers who wanted me to call them. And whatever she was already upset about, this discovery just took her through the roof. So it was a horrible, horrible accusations of me being, and I'm cleaning up the conversation, right? Of me being sexually promiscuous, of me being sexually active, of men only wanting one thing from me, of diseases. I mean, it was a horrible, horrible experience. And honestly, at that time, I was not sexually active. I literally was taking people's phone numbers, giving their orders, and was remembering to empty out my pockets at the end of each shift because I knew better. I just happened to forget that moment. And I didn't know she was going to be irritated the next day by something and was going to invade my space. I didn't know that. I forgot. So I never cried in her face. I never talked back. I never made a crazy face. I was very aware of how I was responding and listening because, again, I did not want any additional smoke, right? I didn't want it. That worked out well. So after all of this argument and accusations and disrespect and verbal abuse and emotional attacks, and then I'm looking beyond my mom and I'm seeing my sister stand there just kind of looking, and I remember the moment feeling like, help me, but I didn't say it. I was kind of trying to use some telepathy type of thing, and it didn't work. My sister and my mom ended up leaving. They went wherever they were going. So I was left standing in our apartment, just like confused, devastated, angry, upset. I remember feeling like, but I'm not even sexually active. And in that moment, I wasn't. I'm not even sexually active. Like, why don't she listen to me? Why didn't she believe me? Like, I can admit I was so broken in that moment. And I had to catch the bus to work. So I didn't have a lot of time to wallow in my emotions because I dare not miss that bus to work and be home when she got back. Like, going to work was my escape at that time of my life. So I remember pacing up and down the hallway in our apartment, and I'm breathing heavy, and I'm doing some of this. I'm angry, and I felt some energy inside of me just so upset and just hot and just super angry. And back then I didn't know the word energy, spirit, emotions. I knew the word emotions, but I wasn't taught like how to pay attention to them and signs and whatnot. But I just remember being so upset, my chest heaving and I'm breathing heavy. And I don't know where this particular idea came from, but after pacing the hallway and being mindful of the time ticking away, I walked into the kitchen, saw a butcher knife in the sink, grabbed the knife, and continued to walk back and forth in the hallway. Now, I can honestly say in that moment, I never had an idea to commit suicide. I was never suicidal. In that moment, I don't know what I was doing with the knife because I was the only one home, but I was upset. I was angry. I'm huffing and puffing, snot running down, tears flowing, like angry. So the way our apartment was set up, the hallway, so the kitchen was like here, the hallway was here, and then off to the left was the bathroom. So I walked in the bathroom and I'm looking in the mirror. I forced myself to look at my image in the mirror, and I see the snot. I see my eyes all red, and y'all see I got big pretty eyes. So they were all red. I see my nose swollen, my face is red, my cheeks are wet with tears. Like I'm looking at all of this stuff, and I have the knife in my one hand, and my other hand is resting on the sink. And I just have all these questions in my mind. Like, what did I do to make her so mean to me? What did I do to make her react to me this way? Why doesn't she believe me? I've done nothing like to have her think that I'm out here being fast. And even in that moment, my sister, we were raised in the same household, but she was very different behavior wise. So I remember in that moment, just like, I'm not even doing half the stuff my sister's doing. Why am I being talked to this way? Why am I being treated this way? I just had so many questions. Because I was raised in a religious household, I began to question God and say, why are you letting me go through this? What have I done? How can I convince her? I remember just breaking down, and I walked out the bathroom, was pacing up and down the hall again, and then in some moment I stopped fussing and crying, and I transitioned to just crying. And I stopped being angry and questioning God, and I transitioned to just feeling bad for myself and completely just ugly cry, breaking down. And in that moment of despair, I was leaning against the wall like this. I was leaning against the wall and I'm crying because I felt like I needed to get this emotion out, but I also got to catch this bus and get to work. And still to this day, sharing this with you all, I don't know where this idea came from. Still to this day. But as I'm crying against the wall like this, I looked up and I saw my forearm, and the knife was still in my hand. I took the knife and I began to make 10 quick cuts back to back from my wrist towards my elbow, like nonstop, just shoot, 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 like just nonstop. And I remember I stood there thinking, wow, because the pain hadn't hit me yet. So I'm just like, wow. And then because I was afraid of my mom, the next thing I think about is, she's going to kill me if I drip blood on this carpet. So I ran back into the bathroom and put my forearm into the sink and let the blood just run and drip into the sink. So now I'm really freaking out because my bus is coming soon. I got to get to work. I'm too afraid to call my mom and ask for help. How can I fix this and get to work? And so I threw the knife in the sink, rinsed it off, had my arm in the sink, was cupping water in my hand to rinse it off. And I'm looking at my forearm, and I'm looking at the open flesh, and I'm looking at it continuing to bleed, and I'm looking at the white meat. And I'm just like, I gotta get to work. So I went immediately from snapping and being in emotional distress to responsibility. I gotta get to work, just like that. And I didn't see an issue with that transition. So I rinsed everything off. We always kept ointment and bandages in the house, and I put some, I think it was some Neosporin over it, put the big rectangle sized band-aids over it, and then we had some gauze from like you would wrap around a sprained ankle or a sprained wrist. Wrap that around my arm, put the little silver little barrette cloth things in place, and went to work like nothing happened. I remember feeling numb on the bus ride to work. I remember creating stories to tell people when they would ask, because I knew people would ask, because I was always upbeat, I was always smiling, I was always polite, I was always greeting people, wishing them a great day. My energy was just always high, even back at 16 years old. So I knew that people were going to question if I acted different, along with why my arm was wrapped up. So I made a plan to go into work and still smile and be upbeat and speak highly while my arm was beginning to throb. And I couldn't see what it looked like because I'd wrapped it up and covered it up. So, mind you, I've never played on a sports team in school. Most adventurous thing I did was band. But when people asked me what happened, I created different stories. One moment it was an injury at sports. Another moment it was a rite of passage because my dad has a lot of Blackfoot Indian in him. So I created a story that because I'm his firstborn with my mom, it's a rite of passage ceremony, and people bought that. People bought that story. So the more that people bought that story, the more that I added to it. I even remember researching different ceremonies for rites of passage, and that got to be my story for a long time about that's what happened to me. Fast forward, I was able to hide my self-mutilation for 2 weeks by always wearing long sleeves, by, you know, just always covering my arm up around my mom. So it was on a Sunday. I never forget, we were on our way to a religious meeting, and my mom called me not too soon after I got out of the shower. So I knew I had to get to my mom quickly. So I put on my underclothes, threw my dress on. I didn't get to put my jacket on or my turtleneck on underneath my dress. So I threw my turtleneck over my arm and I walked out to see what my mom wanted. And because I could tell by her tone, she was upset about something yet again. And I knew we had to get to the meeting, the religious meeting. So I was in haste, trying to get to my mom so that her anger wasn't further fueled. And she asked me something, I answered her, and in me turning to try to get away so quick, my turtleneck fell off of my arm. And my mom, being as sharp as she was, noticed that I was leaning over awkwardly to pick up my turtleneck and kind of like hiding my other arm. And I don't know if she snatched me and like pulled me towards her or if she asked me to come to her, but at some point the cat was out the bag. And she saw these grotesque healing wounds on my forearm. And 2 weeks after healing without stitches, without proper medical treatment, you see my complexion, so the scars were like really, really dark and gross looking. She spazzed out. So then I was threatened with medication and threatened with going to a psychiatric facility with a white coat and my arm strapped. And so needless to say, we didn't go to the religious meeting that day because between shock and anger, my mom she snapped. So what that taught me in that moment was, okay, this cry for attention didn't work. I wanted to be loved and have a conversation and, hold hands and cry together and to be said, well, baby, what can I do to help? I'm sorry. Totally didn't get what I thought I was going to get. So what that taught me as a teenager is to find a different way to deal with my stress, to deal with my feelings of not being good enough, to deal with my feelings of not fitting in at school, to deal with my feelings of, on the surface, being a social butterfly, but really not being able to participate in things because of the religion I was in. It was just a lot going on. And you mix all of that with being pressured from older men to engage in sex, to going through regular teenage, puberty, young adult hormonal changes, coupled with going to one of the toughest but the best schools in the state of Ohio and ranked in the top 5 in the country. There was a lot going on, and I just needed guidance. I needed direction, and I understand now as an adult, I needed things from my mom that she just couldn't give me. I needed things from my mom that I didn't understand at 16, that because she didn't receive them from her mom, because her mom didn't receive them from her mom, that how could she give me those things? How could she know that being a great provider wasn't enough? How could she know that you also need to love and hug and talk to and counsel in love. How could she know that when she never experienced that? How could she know? So again, at 16, my thought process wasn't all on that. My thought process was, okay, so I got to be slicker about how I hurt myself. Because for some twisted reason, I had decided within myself that that was going to be my new coping mechanism. Because I wasn't into alcohol, I wasn't into drugs, and again, at that moment, I was not sexually active. Lo and behold, I still got attention from men, and I started to get curious because I felt like I needed an outlet. And I remember reflecting on how my mom reacted to finding out that I hurt myself and feeling like, well, if she thinks I'm being sexually active and I just got treated like this and I'm not being sexually active, let me go see what the big deal is. Let me go see what it's all about. So I did lose my virginity at the age of 16. And for a couple years, that was my way of coping and my escape and dealing with all the things I mentioned before that I was dealing with as a teenager. When I turned 18, I moved out of the house and I resumed self-mutilation because I was in my own space. But I knew that people treat you different if it's visible, so I transitioned from my forearm to my thigh because only certain people is going to see my thighs, right? Now, let me say this. My mom transitioned in 2008, and we were estranged for 10 years before she passed. And we reconciled 92 days before she transitioned. So for that 92-day period, we talked, we cried, we made amends, we talked about some things in general and some things in specific about my childhood. And I still didn't get what I felt like I needed from my mom at that moment. But something in me said, let it go. And I did that, not knowing that 92 days later, she was going to be found dead in her apartment. Like, I didn't know that. So even when she passed in 2008, it took me 5 more years to grieve, to get through the guilt, and the guilt came from because I was the one keeping the 10-year estrangement going. So the guilt from that, grieving from losing her so tragically in such a young age, keeping my kids from her. Like, it took me 5 years to get through that. Within that 4th year, though, I began a path of awakening or walking a conscious path. So that was in 2012. So I began, and that's because life had just knocked me all the way down, like, and I had to surrender. So I began to study different things and ideas on consciousness. And so a year later in 2013 is when I finally decided to let all of that go. All of that anger, all of that guilt, all of that confusion. I decided to let all that go. And so 5 years after my mom passed, I finally forgave her for everything. Totally and completely forgave her for everything. 5 years after she transitioned. So I remember back to being 16, and I remember the day, and I remember my act. And I still, as I mentioned earlier, to this day, can't tell you where I learned it from. I didn't see it in a movie. I didn't know anybody in school who was engaging in the practice. I didn't read a story about it. Something happened and I engaged in that act. I'm sharing this story time segment to tell you this. The woman that I am today, the brand that I created, Mental Health is Sexy, the content that I share with you on this channel, the information that's in my new book dropping January 24th, the speaking engagements, the workshops that I host, is all to give hope and inspiration to you out there who may be struggling with your mental health. Now, mental health does not mean always that you've been diagnosed with a mental illness. It could simply have to do with trauma-related experiences, low self-esteem, being abused, those things can put us in a space where we feel hopeless. Another word for hopeless is depression. Those experiences can put us in a space where we feel like our self-esteem is low. Nobody loves us. Everybody's out to hurt us. Said another way, created anxiety. Sometimes people, when they experience so much trauma in their mind, they create an alternative reality where they can escape in their mind when they're enduring emotional, physical, financial abuse. So when they create that safe space in their mind, those are called delusions. Those are called different psychoses because people have went inside their brain and created a space where they can't be harmed, where they can't be abused, where they're beautiful, where they're supported, where they're loved. Sometimes different personalities are created from that. I'm saying that to say this. Not everybody has a clinical mental illness. Just like in my case, there's people who exhibit behaviors that allows a therapist or a psychiatrist to check the boxes and say, yep, you got a mental illness. But I challenge, let's figure out where those behaviors come from. Because as I mentioned, as a teenager, I was never suicidal. I just knew that I needed love, attention, a mentor, guidance, correction, coaching, support, disciplining in love. I needed those things, but I couldn't articulate that. And at the age of 16, I didn't understand that my mom was not able to give me the things that I needed. So I had to find my way as an adult and begin the healing process on my own. And my path happened to be alternative and holistic techniques. So watch the teens around you who are lashing out, who are fighting, who are failing in school. And definitely watch the ones who are always smiling all the time, upbeat, making friends, being extra helpful. Because I was that teenager. I was the latter. And I was suffering tremendously in the inside. But on the outside, I made it look good. I made it look good. A lot of times people say the squeaky oil gets the wheel. So again, gets the squeaky wheel gets the oil. So the child who is misbehaving, getting suspended, poor grades, fighting all the time, angry, throwing things, they're the ones that get the attention. But in my case as a teenager, I did everything I could to not get in trouble, to not upset my mom. And I was suffering in the inside. I was dying on the inside. And when all those things manifested, they came out in a way that I began to harm myself. So here are remnants of the scars. Again, it's been a long time, but you can see them. And I've had offers and conversations to get them fixed. And I decided not to because they are a memory of my past as well as receipts to show me how far I've came. And I'm telling you guys this story in an effort to help inspire you to pay attention to the teenagers around you. Or if you're an adult like I am and you can relate to this story time, leave it in the comments. Let's build a community where we can help each other to heal and thrive and release the things that we've been through and may still be going through as an adult. Let me be the beacon of light and be the help and the encouragement to show you and to prove to you that there is life after mental illness. There is life after trauma. There is life after you've experienced something that challenges your mental health. You can choose to heal. If you have a particular question about this story time or about alternative and holistic mental health and healing techniques, leave it in the comments below and I'll be happy to create a video just for you. If you haven't already, I invite you to subscribe to my YouTube channel and click the notification bell so that you're one of the first persons to be informed when I upload new content. What new content, you may ask? Well, of course, story times, right? This is a new segment. But then you're also going to get alternative and holistic mental health and healing techniques, mental health hacks that I still use to this day to support my mental health, and of course, angel numbers. I've learned that over the years of me being a conscious, holistic practitioner, that when sequences of numbers present themselves to us, they have certain meanings, and those meanings can definitely be used to support one's mental health. And that's what I do. So if you have any particular questions about a number sequence, leave that in the comments as well, and I'll be happy to create a video. If you want a more one-on-one contact with me, I invite you to join my Facebook community at Mental Health Hacks YT Exclusive. This is a new community that I'm building, so why don't you be the first to join? In that community, you'll find people who are of like-minded, just like you, who want to learn alternative and holistic techniques to take charge of their mental health and improve their quality of life. And also, once the group gets some folks up in there, I'm going to be hosting monthly webinars for free inside of that group where you can join me live, you can talk to me, share your questions, I can answer them in real time. And then also in the group, you will be able to support the Mental Health is Sexy brand in various ways, such as purchasing the t-shirt or other apparel, and also knowing when I drop my book this month. I'll post the link inside the group and you can be one of the first people to buy it and to put a review on Amazon and to share it with your community. Also, if you find value in this story and you know other people who could appreciate the story and be encouraged by it, please share this video. Share the content, like it, comment, subscribe, all those fantastical things so that we can grow this community and help heal as many people as possible and teach them how to take charge of their mental health. The time is now. And as you already know, I'm Coach V, and my motto is that mental health is sexy, and I need your help in spreading my signature message worldwide. If you have a particular question about my brand, look back in the videos here. There is a video that I uploaded explaining to you exactly what my brand is all about. So, all right, so this is the first segment of story time. Let me know what y'all think. How did it work? Was it okay? Was it inviting? Was it intriguing? And I'll upload another story time. I'm probably going to do one every couple weeks unless y'all want more. So let's get this video to, let's get about 50 likes and I'll do another story time and share with you another piece of me and how I got to be this amazing conscious woman that you see today who is doing her work and helping to heal the masses. All right, Bantu knots out. African continent earrings out. And thank you so much for tuning in. Be blessed.